When I was in college, I worked at our campus Starbucks to make a little extra cash. It could be stressful at times, especially if I was busy, but all in all, it was a pretty good job. I got to have free coffee, and whenever things were slow, I could hang out and talk with my coworkers. A lot of times, I worked the evening shift, which wasn't necessarily as busy as the shifts during the day. I'd work from 6 p.m. until about midnight. We would have a lot of regulars stop by during that time, and it was normal to see people I knew. Sometimes there would be students preparing for a long night of cramming before exams, or maybe a local who needed to get caffeinated before taking on the night shift. I knew a lot of people's go-to orders without them even having to ask. The week of Thanksgiving, I only had a couple of shifts before heading home for the holidays. It was the longest I'd gone without working since the school year had begun. On the first day back at school after break, I had another evening shift at work. It had been a slow night, and I was taking the time to mop the floors before any other customers came in. "There you are, Annaleise," a male's voice said. I looked up, expecting to see someone I knew. There was a tall, thin man, about 30, standing in front of me. He had shortly cropped blonde hair and a big smile on his face as he looked at me. I didn't recognize him at all. "I'm sorry, but have we met?" "Oh no, we haven't yet, but I've been watching you for weeks. My name's Phil. I've been stopping by at different times during the day to see if you were working, but you've been gone." "Well, that's creepy," I thought to myself. "I went home for the holiday," I explained as I went back to mopping. "You're an English lit major, aren't you?" he asked me. I looked up at him in confusion. Yeah. How did you know?" I asked. "I've seen you in the English building, so I just assumed. I'm going to be a teacher's assistant for the professor teaching the Great American Books course," he told me. "Oh, I don't have that until next semester." We talked a little while longer before some customers came by. He convinced me to swap phone numbers in case I ever needed help with my schoolwork. I had no intention of ever calling him, but I gave him my number to get him to leave. I finished out the rest of the shift without problems, but in the back of my mind, I kept thinking about Phil. Something told me that this wasn't going to be the last time I heard from him. Sure enough, my suspicions were confirmed when I got off my shift and checked my phone. Phil had written me a long message talking about how he thought I was gorgeous, and he wanted to get to know me. He explained that he had figured out my course schedule and that they were all classes he had taken before. He still had all of his old notes and wanted to share with me. The scariest part of the message was the last line. "I can drop your notes off at the Russell Building if you want." The Russell Building was the dorm suite where I lived. It was kind of like an apartment, and it was a private building, and you needed a key to even get into the lobby. I had never posted where I lived anywhere online, and I was sure I hadn't mentioned it to Phil. I had no idea how he had found this out, but it made me wonder what else he knew. The next night, I had another evening shift at Starbucks. As usual, it was pretty slow once it got to around 10 p.m. I was using some time in between customers to catch up on some homework. "There you are, Annaleise," a familiar voice said, and my stomach sank. I looked up, and Phil was standing in front of me. This time, he was holding a bouquet of roses, which he handed to me. "Why didn't you answer my text message?" he asked. "Honestly, I've just been really busy," I lied. "Well, I was thinking, what about for our first date, we go to that new Italian place downtown?" he asked me. I was shocked about how forward he was. I cleared my throat awkwardly. Phil? I'm really flattered, but I'm just not really in a place to date right now," I told him. He looked back at me with confusion. "But you're not dating anyone else?" he said. I couldn't help but wonder how he even knew this. "I'm sorry, I'm just not interested." Phil quickly got angry. "Come on, you can't just at least give me a shot? I offered to help you with coursework," he said, raising his voice a little. Just then, my manager Marco stepped out from the back. "Do we have a problem here?" he asked. Phil stared at me for a long time. "If you're not going to get a coffee, you're going to have to leave." "This isn't over," Phil told me, before turning his back and finally leaving. That next week, I switched all my evening shifts to daytime ones in hopes of avoiding Phil. He continued to blow up my phone regularly, and I never answered, but he didn't seem to be anywhere close to giving up. I was starting to think I was going to have to contact campus security to get him to leave me alone. That Friday night, I decided to treat myself. I was exhausted from not only school and work, but the stress of having to avoid Phil. I put on my comfiest pair of pajamas and went to DoorDash. I looked up my favorite Mexican place. I had an order of fried shrimp and rice sent to my suite. It only took about 10 minutes for it to arrive. "I've got a DoorDash order for Annaleise," a voice called from outside my door. "Awesome, be right there." I grabbed my wallet from on top of my desk and rushed to answer the door. I swung it open, and to my shock, Phil was standing right there holding a bag of food with my name on it. Before I could slam the door in his face, he forced his way in and closed the door behind himself. The DoorDash guy was in the lobby. I told him I was your boyfriend and would bring it up to you. I snatched the bag out of his hand and put it aside. "I've had enough of you stalking me. You've gone too far," I said. "You've got 5 minutes to leave before I call the cops." He looked at me like I had shoved a dagger in his chest. "Just let me show you how devoted I am to you," he said. Before I could stop him, he lifted up his shirt, revealing my name tattooed across his entire chest in huge, bold letters. I was terrified. "Is that real?" "Yes, and it hurt like crazy too," he answered. "You need to leave. I'm not kidding. Leave now," I said as I stepped away from him. I felt like I was going to be sick. "Please, Annaleise, don't do this," he said, grabbing me roughly by the wrist. As soon as he touched me, I let out the loudest scream I could. It shook the walls, and he let go of me right away, backing towards the door. Before I could stop him, he had run out of the room. My neighbor, a girl named Mariah, ran to my room when she heard my scream. I told her what happened, and she called 911. The police searched the whole building, but found nothing. To this day, Phil is still roaming the streets of my campus, and I have no idea when he's going to strike again. When I was in high school, I dated this kid named Cody. He was the very first boyfriend that I ever had. While I admit that I may have thought I was in love with him way back when we first met, our relationship got toxic before long. He was incredibly jealous and hated when I so much as glanced at another guy. He would get annoyed anytime I spent time with my girlfriends instead of him and was constantly trying to tear me down. He would always find something to make fun of me for, whether it was an acne breakout, a bad test grade, or if I had even gained a pound or two. I always knew that I deserved better, but I just didn't know how to get rid of Cody. He was always telling me that nobody else would want me if I dumped him. I didn't see a way out until graduation finally came. I had been accepted into my dream college, 2 hours away from home. I could finally say goodbye to Cody for good and be free. I dumped him the day I graduated and felt excited about what was to come. What I hadn't expected was for Cody's aunt to know someone in the admissions office at my college. They had been able to get him accepted at the last minute. My parents were helping me move my stuff into my dorm when he walked by, shooting me a sick-looking smile. "Eisenhower Hall," he said, gesturing to the dorm I was moving into. "Good to know." I felt myself begin to panic. It didn't seem like I was going to be able to get rid of him as soon as I had been hoping. I tried to make the best of my first few weeks of college. I joined a few clubs, went to freshman meet and greets, but wherever I turned, it always seemed like Cody was around. I had blocked his phone number and his Instagram, but he still sent messages to me through Facebook. He kept telling me that whatever I did, I was never going to be able to get rid of him. One Friday night, I was about to go out with a couple of friends when I got some particularly scary messages from Cody. There were video messages of him crying in his dorm. "I'll do whatever you want. Just tell me what to do. Please take me back." I don't know if it was because I was a couple of glasses of wine in or because I was just completely sick of Cody stalking me, but I totally went off on him. "You know what? Why don't you drown yourself?" I messaged back. This was not like me at all. I never spoke this way, and I definitely didn't mean it, but I couldn't take it back, and I didn't want to. I headed out to the bars with my friends that night, and I promised myself I wouldn't think of Cody again. It was a little after 11:30, and my roommate Cass had just ordered the two of us some margaritas. We were standing at the bar waiting for them to be ready when, all of a sudden, I noticed Cody had sent me a new message on Facebook. It was a video. It took me a second to pull it up on my phone since I was a little bit tipsy. Cody was standing on the edge of the deep end of the campus pool. It was what the diving team used during their practices. At first, I was confused about what he was trying to do. Cody had some thick ropes, which he had tied to some cement bricks. I watched in horror as he tied the other end of those ropes to his own ankles. Before I could even process what was happening, Cody then picked up a cement block in each arm and jumped into the pool. I screamed out loud and told Mariah to call 911 and report a possible drowning. While she was doing that, I got on the phone with my friend Micah. He was on the diving team and I knew he practiced late at night. I told him to hurry quickly to the main pool and see if he could find Cody. Micah was still on the phone with me when I heard him gasp and scream Cody's name. The phone went dead and I knew he must have found him. It wasn't until midnight when I found out what had happened. Micah had found Cody just a few minutes after he had tried to drown himself in the pool. He had been able to get him back above water and breathing in only a few minutes. After Cody got checked out at the hospital, he got sent straight to a mentally insane asylum, where I hope he stays for as long as possible. I was unlucky enough to be cursed with not only one, but two bad parents. My mom was on crack, while my dad was hung up on booze when I was born. Both of them ended up in jail. It was only thanks to one of the nurses that delivered me that I ended up getting a nice, normal life. She told her husband about me and sent him pictures of me when I was first born. She was still training to become a registered nurse, and her husband was a custodian at a local elementary school. Neither one of them had the extra money to be taking in a newborn, but somehow between the two of them, they made it work. My adoptive mother picked up an extra shift at a local nursing home, and my adoptive dad traded in his cigarettes for diapers and baby formula. They didn't have a lot, but what they did have, they spent on me. It wasn't until I was in high school that I was really able to appreciate everything they had done for me. My mom was making enough money to support our whole family, but we still had no idea what we were going to do about my college. I still had a few years before I needed to worry about that, but my parents promised me that they would find a way for me to go. I knew how in debt my parents were for taking me in, and making sure that they gave me the best education they possibly could in life. I definitely didn't expect anything more. One evening when my parents were both at work, the home phone rang. I knew better than to pick it up myself before I knew who it was, and figured the caller would just leave a message for one of my parents. When I walked into the kitchen, I heard a beeping sound come from the answering machine. I hit the play button, curious to see who it was. "Hello, this is Lisa. I'm Tanya's mom, and I would like to get in touch with her," the message began. I got excited immediately and picked up the phone before the person could continue their message. "Hey there, I'm Tanya," I said into the phone. A woman's voice answered me. "Hey Tanya, how are you?" I'm doing fine. How are you?" I asked. The woman explained that she was my real mom, and she was hoping to talk to me in person. She offered to buy me dinner at the local Applebee's tomorrow night if I was open to it. I told her that would be fine, but I planned to tell my adoptive parents I would be sleeping over at my best friend Annaleise. Something told me they wouldn't be exactly thrilled if they found out I was meeting my birth parents without their permission. The next evening, I packed a fake sleepover bag so my parents would think I really was sleeping over. As soon as I was far enough away that they couldn't see me from our house, I caught an Uber to the Applebee's my real parents had planned to meet me at. When I got there and I noticed my parents, I slipped into the same booth next to them. Both of my parents looked at me curiously, as if they weren't really sure what they were expecting. They told me to order whatever I wanted, and so I ordered the steak and mashed potatoes with green beans. While I was waiting for the food to come out, my dad started offering me drinks. He explained that every Wednesday the margaritas were free, and he encouraged me to get more of them. I ended up ordering 3 red raspberry margaritas in hopes of getting them to leave me alone. I was completely out of my mind before the second round of drinks came around. I can barely remember my adoptive mom packing me into her truck and taking me back home to her own house that night. I was expecting my mom to yell at me that night, but much to my surprise, she just told me to get into bed and stay there. I decided to do as I was told, at least for this time. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out one of the newest videos on Anna Horror. I got stuck in a water park ride overnight. It's guaranteed to send a shiver down your spine. Sleep tight.